Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Verrill. I'm the CRM Managing Editor for Software Advice. I've invited Paul Greenberg to join me today. He is the owner of the 56 Group Consultancy, as well as the author of the best-selling book CRM at the Speed of Light, as well as just in general a thought leader in the CRM space. So Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here, Ashley.
I invited Paul here to talk to us a little bit about a report we just released called the CRM BuyerView Report. Basically, it's an analysis of about 5,280 interactions with real companies evaluating CRM software. When we talked to them, we evaluated things like what deployment model they preferred, or what features they were looking for in their new software, or just in general why they were looking to purchase CRM software at whatever time that we spoke to them. Just to start our conversation here about CRM buyers, I wanted to look quickly at an article you wrote recently for Diginomica. Basically, this was a 5-part series that was looking at the future of CRM, and one of the things you mentioned specifically was that CRM is in this metamorphosis stage right now. That's basically the result of the digital transformation of business, right? So to quote you, you said specifically that CRM without integration of these digital channels, without the capture of knowledge, the identification of insight, and the personalization of the customer experience is not CRM. If you had to boil that down into specific features, how would you describe that? Because another thing that we looked at in our report, as I mentioned, was features people were interested in, and it still kind of was bucketed into those traditional things you would think of. Managing contacts, obviously. There was note-taking, obviously. Reporting is another extremely common one, which you would expect, but I think that reporting feature might be one of the areas where you're talking about the digital transformation really impacts what people are looking for.
If you're looking at it from, let's say, small business, you know what they're going to want? They're going to want Salesforce automation. That's what they're going to want. They always want that first. They always have. CRM was founded on that, right? And when I say that, I mean, I'm talking about contact management, opportunity management, if they're even big enough for that. If they're really like growing small business concern, pipeline management, meaning they have a group of salespeople as opposed to 1 or 2 family members, selling for them. They're going to want just account management, the fundamental, simple stuff that they can helps them run their business in a more effective way. Just a straight old traditional thing. If you're an enterprise and you've done that and you've got hundreds of salespeople, you're going to start wanting competitive intelligence, and you're going to want sales intelligence. So, for example, you're going to want not only transactional data that you have, but you're going to want to go out there on the social web and find out, not just what your competition is doing, but what the companies who you're targeting are doing, management changes that might be of import to you, conversations going on about that brand, and so on and so forth. And now you have the tools available to do that. That's a more, let's call it, social feature on the intelligence side. But that's also one that small businesses don't necessarily need. So they may go, for example, with marketing automation. So, for example, there are a number of small business-focused technology companies like Infusionsoft and Converge Enterprise and some of these other ones that actually focus on sales and marketing for small business as their primary focus, because that's the thing that they hear from their thousands of customers or their thousands of and prospects that they want, right? And that's what they give them.
So we've already talked about social CRM a little bit, but I did want to come back to it because the conversation is pretty much trending, and social CRM is the future, particularly as it relates to personalizing the customer experience and customer interactions. This was definitely reflective in our sample in that it was mentioned as one of the top required applications within people who were looking at integrated suite, actually. Admittedly, it was the smallest rung on the totem pole of applications companies were looking at, but I think if we had looked at the data even a couple of years ago, it wouldn't even have been there. So I was wanting to know whether or not you expect that requirement to become a bigger proportion of a necessary application, or if you really just see CRMs in general morphing into a social CRM.
So social CRM is not the future, it's the present. Personalization is the near future, right? Meaning that, and that's that. When I say that, meaning you're right. The demand for it is extremely high. the technology and the strategies and the programs for it aren't necessarily all that advanced. On the other hand, some of the larger enterprises have terrific personalization focus. Their focus is strongly around that, and they're using very substantial, almost infinitely scaling analytics to figure all that out. You got companies like Epiphany and on the technology side who are providing customer interaction engines that, which is Infor, of course, which is customer interaction engines that are personalizing in real time, right? I mean, you're at that stage now where you've got companies with those kind of advanced technologies. For a small business company, there isn't much in that way of really high-end personalization technology. There is, of course, programs and strategies you can implement in effect that will actually work for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we talked in January, I think, and we were talking about, what's next in CRM, and one of the big things we talked about was personalization in real time, which is enabled through, the enormous amount of data we now have at our fingertips. The trick here now is finding the technologies that can really capture that data and analyze it at the moment that it matters most, because maybe even 10 minutes from now that piece of insight isn't even useful anymore. So I remember that conversation. Just to close up here, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, which was about how buyers, which is definitely something that we find when they're talking to us about what they want in their new product, they really talk about outcomes, or they talk about pain points they want to address, and maybe less in specific functionality terms. So that is something we detailed in our interactions, is what pain points were they wanting to address, or what were their reasons for shopping for software in the first place. And above all, this kind of is lumped into this bucket of we need to increase efficiency in organization. That is very general, but I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what did efficiency in organization mean to a company 5 years ago, and what does it mean now as far as how that translates into what they want the CRM system to do?
Again, it was operational efficiency. That's what CRM was actually pretty good at in its early days. I mean, I hated calling it efficiency. I used to call it effectiveness back then. And I refused to call it efficiency actually back then, but that's what it was. I was just being stubborn. So there's that. Now, when you're dealing with efficiency, it's also how well you solve a problem, right, with a customer. Or it's not taking costs out. It is your act. Now it actually is effectiveness, right? Meaning, how effective are you with the interactions with your customers? Meaning, if it's a problem, how effective are you in resolving that problem in the way it needs to be resolved in a reasonable period of time? If it's a query and not a problem, just a common interaction, is how effective are you in getting the answer to that query to a customer in the manner they're looking for it. So it could be via Twitter, Facebook, a phone, email, whatever. So what through the channels that they're looking for it in. If it's from the marketing side, is going to be, classic almost, is campaign effectiveness, but it's also resource allocation if you're dealing with very large enterprises with multiple entities, is how well are you allocating your resources. But it's also what quality of resources now are you producing, that given that the customer's demands are so much greater than they were. And finally, from the standpoint of what efficiency means, is are you providing a good array of products, services, tools, and consumable experiences to a large group of customers to satisfy the larger part of them.
So basically, we know we need to treat each customer differently, but we also need to figure out how to scale that process efficiently. So I can definitely see how that's changed. So I want to thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.